Heard every week on the amateur radio bands all around the world, broadcast on low-power AM and FM stations all across the United States, and one of the first podcasts on the Internet. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, the worldwide premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service of the air. Here are the stories for release around the earth as we come to air with edition number 1416 of This Week in Amateur Radio. After the sale of MFJ, Haight and Cushcraft returned to the amateur radio marketplace. A man in New York State is arrested after interfering with emergency communications. World Amateur Radio Day is gearing up for lots of activities. The deadline to purchase rebuilt Econco power tubes is coming up fast. We will tell you how long you have. According to one source, 2026 is poised to be a below-average hurricane season. AMSAT recently updated its satellite status page. We will tell you what all the new colors mean. The league announces changes in the Central Division leadership. We will have an update from AMSAT on the FO-29 satellite. Elecraft donates a complete station to the ARRL. And DXtra.com announces new features on its website. We will tell you all about the new features coming up in this week's report. These headline stories will come to you in a moment, along with this week's special features. We'll visit with Bruce Page, KK5DO, and get an update from AMSAT and what's new with all of those amateur satellites in orbit. Australia's own Onno Benshoff, VK6FLAB, and Foundations of Amateur Radio will answer the question, what is an S-unit? Our own amateur radio historian, Will Rogers, K5WLR, returns with another edition of A Century of Amateur Radio. This week, Will takes us back to 1924. The summer of 1924 brought the first explorers to the 4 new shorter wavelength bands that were opened up to amateur radio use in July. Amateurs anticipated interesting times ahead based on their earlier experimental work that produced the first transatlantic QSOs. And we will stop by and visit with Bill Sawyers, AJ8B in the DX Corner, with all the latest news on DXpeditions, DX, upcoming contests, and a lot more. That's all straight ahead as North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service, This Week in Amateur Radio, takes to the air right now. Reporting from our headquarters studio just outside of Albany, New York, where the weather is turning cold once again, I'm George, W2XBS.
Reporting from our studios in beautiful Bradenton, Florida, where the weather is hot and my golf game is not, I'm Mike Nicolich, K9DX Mike.
Reporting from our news bureau in Salem, Ohio, this is Denny Haight, NZ8D.
And reporting from our news bureau just outside Rochester, New York, along the southern shore of Lake Ontario, this is George, Kilo Charlie 2, Oscar X-Ray Juliet.
And reporting from the all-new Ham Shack TV studios in Knoxville, Tennessee, I'm Josh Marler, AA4WX.
Reporting from our news bureau here in Wisconsin, where rumor has it Dayton Hamvention is just around the corner, which means 2 things. Wallets are about to get lighter, and every I'm just going to look is a bold-faced lie. I'm Marvin Turner, W0MET.
And reporting from our news bureau this week in my home shack in Cortlandville, New York, where the birds are chirping, the sun is shining, and the grass is growing. I'm Chris Perrine, KB2FAF.
And reporting from our amateur radio outpost in the western Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, where the bluebirds have been busy building nests, but we're still looking for a little snow this week. I'm Don Hulick, K2ATJ.
And reporting from our news bureau in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where the weather is still trying to make up its mind, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR, not quite ready to put the heavy coat away.
Today's edition of This Week in Amateur Radio is 100% human. Hello, everyone. Before we get into this week's newscast, I'd like to tell everyone that This Week in Amateur Radio now has its own Discord server. That's right. A place online where we can discuss everything technology and amateur radio. So join us. Just go to Discord on your computer or download the Discord app on your portable device and search for TWIAR or This Week in Amateur Radio. We look forward to seeing you on the new This Week in Amateur Radio Discord server.
Leading off our news this week, production of the high-gain and Cushcraft antennas and antenna products popularized by MFJ Enterprises will be going forward under new ownership and in a new home in Linton, Indiana. The Indiana-based manufacturing and engineering business, ITU Corporation, has purchased both brands from Martin F. Jew, K5FLU, president and founder of MFJ Enterprises. MFJ, which Martin founded in Starkville, Mississippi, halted production in the spring of 2024. Manufacturing of the two brands will resume at a property that formerly housed the National Guard Armory. The 15-acre site is being repurposed for the production. In a statement announcing the deal, Martin expressed confidence that ITU will honor both brands' tradition of service to the amateur radio community. He said that he was certain that ITU's Dave and Canby Carpenter share our commitment to American-made quality and customer satisfaction. They bring the engineering expertise and manufacturing passion necessary to keep these products and these trusted American high-performance antennas on towers worldwide for years to come. The Carpenters are also the owners of the electronic supply store Tech Shack. ITU, which has its company headquarters in Duggar, Indiana, also purchased MFJ's designs, tooling, specialized equipment, manufacturing, and marketing rights for use in the Linton location. The company plans to move all manufacturing operations to Linton from Mississippi, a transition that is expected to take about 2 months.
Police in central New York State have arrested a man and charged him with interfering with emergency radio channels by transmitting false statements over equipment he was unauthorized to use. Local media reports said police stopped Chad Potter of Sherburne, New York, on March 31st while he was driving in a vehicle equipped with a number of radios tuned to frequencies where, according to police, he has been disrupting emergency services. A report on WBNG News 12 said that an investigation into the reported radio interference dates back to 2021. Police said that fire, EMS, and law enforcement operations were disrupted several times by his messages. The WBNG News report described one transmission as shots fired, which reportedly caused concern and confusion among first responders and the public. On the day Potter was arrested on the radio-related charges, city police had pulled him over in relation to a traffic stop. Investigators said his vehicle was equipped with aftermarket lighting that made it look like he was an emergency responder. Police issued a citation to him for the lighting.
All is ready for World Amateur Radio Day, or WARD 2026. John Ross, KD8IDJ, is here with all the details you need to know.
Activity begins on Saturday, April 18th, as amateur radio operators and their national societies worldwide celebrate the founding of the International Amateur Radio Union, IARU. It was on this day in 1925 that the IARU was formed in Paris, France. Hiram Percy Maxim, co-founder of ARRL, served as its first president. And since its founding, ARRL has served as the IARU International Secretariat. ARRL is encouraging radio clubs to use WARD or any other time during the month of April to host a ham radio open house, and there is still time to do just that. Just set up a working amateur radio station anywhere to showcase your club station and promote amateur radio science and technology to the public. Check out ARRL's ham radio open house station locator at www.arrl.org/open-house. To date, 30 clubs have added their locations to the locator map, including California, Hawaii, and Iowa. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
Visit the League's website for World Amateur Radio Day ideas and activities to engage your community or school radio club in World Amateur Radio Day and Ham Radio Open House.
ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, has welcomed a new high-performance Elecraft station to Studio 3 at W1AW, the Hiram Percy Maxim Memorial Station, at its headquarters in Newington, Connecticut. Founded in 1998 and headquartered in Watsonville, California, Elecraft produces high-performance amateur radio equipment available both factory-assembled and as kits. Its product line spans ultra-portable to full-feature desktop stations and is widely used by operators ranging from parks-on-the-air activators to de-expedition teams. Elecraft co-founder Eric Swartz, WA6HHQ, visited ARRL headquarters April 7, 2026, to formally present the station. ARRL staff, including CEO David Minster, NA2AA, were on hand to receive the equipment. The station includes the K4D transceiver with built-in Cat4 automatic antenna tuner, KPA 1500 plus watt solid-state amplifier, and companion accessories including the K-Pod control panel, K-Pack 3 aux cable interface, MH4 hand microphone, and SP4 speakers. The K4 supports full remote operation, allowing control from another K4, a software application, or Elecraft's K4/0 remote panel. Its peer-to-peer architecture enables straightforward remote setup without reliance on a centralized server. We're pleased to support ARRL and W1AW with this station, said Swartz. W1AW is an important destination for radio amateurs, and we are glad members and other visitors will have the opportunity to get on the air using Elecraft gear. Through partnerships with manufacturers, W1AW offers operators the opportunity to get on the air using a wide range of modern stations under one of the most recognized call signs in amateur radio. During his visit, Swartz also met with ARRL Senior Lab Engineer Rick Ciervo, W1CIE, and Digital RF Engineer John McAuliffe, W1DRF. Swartz is a key member of the ARRL Clean Signal Initiative Working Group, which is developing technical standards to improve transmitter and amplifier signal purity. The ARRL Clean Signal Initiative is a program of the ARRL Technical Standards Committee. We're grateful to Eric and to Elecraft for their continued support of ARRL and the amateur radio service, said Minster.
An important source for rebuilt power tubes is going away. Microwave Power Products plans to close operations at the former Econco facility in California, ending its program for rebuilding the tubes used in vacuum tube type transmitters. MPP said operations at the Woodland manufacturing site will cease on September 1, 2026, as it consolidates operations to Palo Alto. As part of the transition, the company will discontinue repair services for Econco power grid tubes, though it will continue to manufacture new tubes. The move also ends Econco's bank program, which allowed customers to store non-working power grid tubes at the Woodland facility to be rebuilt and made available for future purchase. The deadline to purchase repaired Econco power grid tubes is May 12th at close of business. According to the release, failure to confirm a purchase or request the return of non-working tubes by that date will be treated as consent for MPP to dispose of property remaining in the bank program. According to a timeline on MPP's website, Econco was founded in 1968 and held the first contracts awarded by the U.S. government to remanufacture microwave devices, twice receiving the Navy's Award for Excellence. The development is significant for stations using transmitters that require tubes such as the iMac 4CX 20000E. Several customers have expressed concern regarding the dwindling number of companies offering rebuilt power tubes, which provide a cost-effective alternative to purchasing new tubes or a solid-state transmitter. Massachusetts-based Kenetron advertises vacuum tube rebuilds, and some readers have inquired about options on Alibaba, including those from Chinese manufacturer Jingguang, though some expressed concerns about sourcing from China, including reliability and import tariffs. Dave Morgan is the Director of Engineering at Sinclair Telecable in the Hampton Roads region of Southeast Virginia. Among his properties are 2 AM sites using tube-type transmitters and a Gates-Harris FM model. Vacuum power tube technology is proven and still somewhat reliable, he said, though less efficient than solid-state. He has observed over the years that Gates-Harris, Collins Continental, and Broadcast Electronics built their tube transmitters to last. Morgan acknowledged that some engineers have reported quality control or lifespan issues from rebuilders in recent years. I understand that the power tube rebuilders and manufacturers might be having a harder time nowadays sourcing elements like tungsten and thorium, he said. But Morgan Sinclair Properties, no relation to the larger Sinclair Broadcast Group, have had no significant problems with rebuilt tubes over the decades. His stations follow the rebuilders' break-in procedures to the letter, paying close attention to filament voltages, aiming for proper tuning, monitoring stack temperatures, and keeping the ambient air inside the transmitter buildings clean, cool, and dry. Like everything else after 2020, the costs for tube rebuilding shot up, Morgan said. As a result, the cost for brand new tubes followed suit.
An initial prediction for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season suggests slightly fewer storms than average due to the anticipated development of El Niño conditions in the coming months. John Ross, KD8IDJ, files this special report from League headquarters.
The forecast from Colorado State University predicts 13 named storms, just below the average of 14.4, of which 6 are expected to gain hurricane strength and 2 are likely to become major hurricanes, Category 3 or higher. According to the researchers, El Niño is a climate pattern in which warmer than normal water temperatures in the eastern and central Pacific increase westerly winds into the Caribbean and eastern Atlantic. That results in greater wind shear that inhibits hurricane formation and strengthening. The forecast also predicts a 20% chance of a major hurricane making landfall along the U.S. Gulf Coast this year, along with a 15% chance of a major hurricane hitting the Atlantic coast. AccuWeather has its own early forecast, similar but less specific, predicting 11 to 16 named storms, including 4 to 7 hurricanes and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. The National Hurricane Center, NHC, is expected to release its initial predictions for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season mid-season in mid-May. Assessing tropical storm-related hazards inland will be easier this year with enhancements to the NHC's frequently used cone maps, which will now show watches and warnings inland as well as along the coast. Many tropical storms and hurricanes cause significant damage after coming ashore. Amateur Radio Emergency Service, ARRL groups in all hurricane-prone areas are advised to remain vigilant regardless of the forecast. ARRL Emergency Communications and Field Services Director Josh Johnson, KE5MHV, noted that the watchword at the recent National Hurricane Conference, in which he was a presenter, was that it only takes one bad storm to be a bad year. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
ARRL has memoranda of understanding to work cooperatively with a variety of governmental and non-governmental agencies that are active in response to hurricanes and other disasters.
Attention public information coordinators and public information officers. 2026 ARRL Field Day is June 27th through the 28th. But it's already time to begin planning to promote the amateur radio's #1 annual demonstration. And this year is a special year with ARRL's partnership with America 250. And this year's Field Day theme, Amateur Radio, a National Resource. Backed by popular demand, the members of the ARRL Public Relations Committee have organized Zoom meetings to provide training, tips, and best practices to help you in your role to promote ARRL Field Day. These meetings are intended for ARRL public information officers, public informational coordinators, and other ARRL section volunteers. Before attending these meetings, please review resources at www.arrl.org/field day and prepare any questions that you may have.
More hams are on the air in California. The Irvine Disaster Emergency Community Team, or IDEC, continues to have success for its technician-level amateur radio licensing course. The latest study and exam session ran February 9th through the 23rd, 2026, and was conducted by the Radio Club at Irvine Valley College. A total of 43 exams were administered to 32 applicants during the testing session. Of those, 27 participants passed, resulting in an overall success rate of 84%. In addition to the scheduled session, 2 IDEC training participants were tested in advance by Kilo 6, Papa Bravo, along with several volunteer examiners from the San Diego County Amateur Radio Council. Both candidates successfully passed the technician exam, with one also earning a general class license. The IDEC program continues to support the growth of trained amateur radio operators, encouraging them to join IDEC while strengthening emergency communications capabilities within CERT and the community at large. For more information about upcoming courses and licensing opportunities, contact IDEC via the November 6, IndiaPapaDelta.org website.
Brett Walls, N9BA, has resigned as Central Division Director, citing professional and personal commitments. He has served as director since 2025, and before that as vice director, beginning in 2021. Serving in the capacity of division director has been a rewarding experience and the highlight of my amateur radio journey, said Walls in a message to ARRL members in the division. Whether supporting emergency communications, fostering technical growth, or strengthening our community connections, the ARRL plays an important part, and I am proud to have been part of it. Consistent with ARRL's governing documents, Joshua Long, W9HT of New Haven, Indiana, who has served as Vice Director since 2025, has assumed the office of Central Division Director effective immediately. ARRL President Rick Roderick, K5UR, will appoint a successor as Vice Director for the remaining term, which expires in 2027. The Central Division includes Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. ARRL is governed by an all-volunteer board of directors. Elections are held for 5 of the 15 ARRL divisions each year for terms of 3 years.
Joshua Long, W9HT, is the new ARRL Central Division Director. Brett Walls, N9BA, has resigned as ARRL Central Division Director, citing professional and personal commitments. He served as director since 2025, and before that as vice director beginning in 2021. Serving in the capacity of division director has been a truly rewarding experience and the highlight of my amateur radio journey, said Walls in a message to the ARRL members in the division. Whether supporting emergency communications, fostering technical growth, or strengthening our community connections, the ARRL plays an important part, and I'm proud to have been a part of it. Consistent with ARRL's governing documents, Joshua Long, W9HT, of New Haven, Indiana, who has served as Vice Director since 2025, has assumed the office of Central Division Director, effective immediately. ARRL President Rick Roderick, K5UR, will appoint a successor as Vice Director for the remaining term, which expires in 2027. The Central Division includes Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin.
Already battered by flooding a month ago, Hawaii watched as its emergency responders went back on the air for yet another storm. With memories still fresh from historic storm-related flooding in March, hams in Hawaii were back on the air early this month after the same kind of storm, known as a Kona low, struck the region. The activation, which began on April 8th, focused on the same cooperation as before between city and county emergency communicators and Hawaii's Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service, or RACES, operators. Staying at their radios overnight into April 9th, the RACES hams ensured that traffic could be passed via voice and WindLink email on both 2 meters and the HF bands. An additional overnight shift carried the operation through to its conclusion on April 10th. Throughout the activation, the hams were able to pass situational awareness traffic and assist with response coordination, making the necessary adjustments in response to varying conditions. When interference disrupted the original channel, the hams had to QSY to a new 80-meter frequency to keep long-range communication viable. The storm, known as the Kona Low 3 weather system, came only weeks after back-to-back Kona low storms led to Hawaii being declared a federal disaster area.
Fuji Oscar 29, or FO29-JAS2, the long-lived Japanese amateur radio satellite launched in 1996, continues to operate its VHF-UHF inverting analog linear transponder under the control of the Japan Amateur Radio League. Because the onboard batteries have failed years ago, the satellite depends entirely on solar power and can only function when its solar panels are illuminated. FO29 entered a full sunlight orbit around March 9, 2026. During full sunlight periods, the satellite experiences no or negligible eclipses, allowing the analog transponder to operate continuously on illuminated passes without scheduled command activations. The first full sunlight window began in early March 2026 and lasted approximately 40 days. According to the JARL schedule, this continuous operation ends around April 21, 2026, after which the satellite will enter an eclipse period for about 1 month. A second, longer full sunlight period is expected from approximately May 20th to mid-November 2026, during which continuous operations should resume. During eclipse periods or the transition out of full sunlight, the JARL control team sends specific commands to activate the transponder at designated UTC times. If the transponder does not turn on within about 2 minutes of the command start, the team terminates the attempt. During confirmed full sunlight periods, no regular command schedule is needed. The transponder stays active whenever the satellite is in sunlight. Operators should always check real-time status via AMSAT Live satellite status, Oscar status pages, or recent community reports, as voltage instability in the aging satellite can occasionally cause unexpected behavior. Amateurs are reminded to use proper Doppler correction, follow linear transponder etiquette, listen before transmitting, keep signals clean, and limit uplink power to avoid overloading the transponder, which is typically no more than a few watts with a modest antenna. The JRRL page provides the detailed historical and upcoming command schedules for eclipse periods across 2025-2026. For the absolute latest status and any updates from the Japanese control team, monitor the official JARRL FO29 page, AMSAT.org, and AMSAT bulletins. FO29's continued operation nearly 30 years after launch remains a testament to robust engineering and the dedication of the JARRL team.
If you visited the AMSAT satellite status page recently, you may have noticed the color scheme and satellite naming convention look a bit different. These changes have prompted some questions from the community, and we wanted to take a moment to explain the reasoning behind the updates. We received a request to change transponder repeater operational from blue to green, since green often means good. That made sense, so we made the change along with a few other minor color adjustments. When we rolled it out, however, we quickly heard from users who couldn't distinguish transponder repeater operational from no signal heard. After some research, we learned that red-green color blindness affects roughly 10% of the population, and that's just one of 3 prominent types of color vision deficiency, each affecting a different part of the spectrum. After further research, we adopted the IBM colorblind palette, which allows 99.988% of people to reliably distinguish between 5 colors. While some users have suggested alternative color schemes, many of these proposals would reintroduce the same accessibility conflicts we set out to solve. As satellites grow more capable, many now carry multiple operating modes. Rather than assigning a separate color to each mode, which quickly becomes impractical when a single satellite may support 5 or 6, we've given each mode its own line on the status page. To accommodate this, we updated the naming convention from just the satellite name to the satellite name plus mode. For example, SSTV operations on the International Space Station now appear as ISS _ SSTV close bracket. This approach scales cleanly as the new multimode satellites come online. We also renamed transponder repeater operational to satellite active, which simply means the mode you selected to report on is active. We made this change because transponder and repeater are two-way modes, and an increasing number of satellites are now being launched with interesting one-way modes other than just telemetry and beacons. We're always open to suggestions, but please remember, we are all volunteers at AMSAT.
Hello and welcome to the DX Corner for your weekly dose of DX. I'm Bill, AJ8B. I have an update on the next major DXpedition that's already in the works, and that would be to Peter the First Island, 3 Yankee / Peter. The 3 Yankee 0 Lima DXpedition to Peter the First Island is planned for February of 2027, involving a team of 19 operators. The group has secured a financial partnership with a private entity to share the expedition costs. In April of 2024, the Norwegian Polar Institute granted the landing permit necessary for the amateur radio operation. Preparations are underway with the 2026 3 Yankee 0 Kilo Bouvet Island DXpedition container of equipment currently being shipped to Texas for repacking before its final journey to Peter the First. The team aims to spend about 20 days near Peter the First Island, dedicating approximately 14 days to on-island radio activities. Departure is set for February of 2027, and that gives you an idea of how challenging these are. They applied for the landing permit in 2024, so almost 3 years to the day, and good luck to them. The following DX information comes from Bernie, W3UR, editor of the Daily DX, the Weekly DX, and the How's DX column in QST. If you would like a free 2-week trial of the Daily DX, your only source of real-time DX information, just drop me a note at thedxmentor.com and I'll fix you up. Well, the first thing we have is from Elvira, Italy Victor 3, Fox Sugar Golf, who is QRV from 3 X-Ray 3 Alpha, which is Guinea. She's operating on Romu Island, Republic of Guinea, until April 25th. This self-funded single-operator de-expedition will focus on making contacts across HF and 6 meters using sideband CW and FT8, FT4. She'll be utilizing 2 ICOM IC7300s and multiple antennas. Room Island is historically known as the Treasure Island of West Africa. She's a great operator, so good luck to her. From the South Sudan, which is Zulu 8, we have this. The International DX Press and Oscar Mike 3 Juliet Whiskey report that Daya Zulu 81 Delta, also known as Yankee India 1 Delta Zulu, has had his World Food Program contract extended by 8 months, and he returns to Juba this week. He will be on the air in his spare time utilizing FT8 and single sideband, mostly on weekends, and you can QSL OM3JW through OQRS. So from the Gambia, which is Charlie 5, we have this. The 425 DX News reports that Fox 4 Alpha Golf Golf and Fox 5 Radio Alpha Victor will be on the air as Charlie 5 Delta on digital modes, RIDI, PSK, and FT8, and as Charlie 5 Charlie on sideband and CW between April 24th and May 8th. They plan a side trip to Bijou Islands, which is AF060 in the IoT designator, as well. From the island, the call sign will be Charlie 5 Bravo and on the RS-44 satellite as well. Charlie 5 Delta's QSL is through LOTW only. Charlie 5 Charlie and Charlie 5 Bravo are both via LOTW or direct via Fox 5 Radio Alpha Victor. From Timor-Leste, which is 4 Whiskey 6, we have this. VK4 Mike Alpha Papa, Darren Johnston, has been active holiday style since April 2nd as 4 Whiskey 6 Delta Alpha. He is mostly on 10-meter sideband, but is also on 80, 40, 20, 15, and 12 using an ICOM IC7300 at 100 watts and the 2-wire antennas. And you can QSL this operation via VK4 MAP and include $4 US or €4. Rodriguez Island, 3 Baker 9, November, is active. Victor Uniform 3, Oscar Papa Tango, which is also known as Oscar Mike 0 Golf Alpha, Cervana, has just completed the first week of a 7-week de-expedition to Port Motherin, Rodriguez Island, where he is operating as 3 Baker 9 November. He will be there until May 20th. He plans a trip to Lakshadweep, which is VU7, in the second half of this year, and is also considering a trip to Sri Lanka, which is 4 Sierra, or Bangladesh, which is Sierra 2. From the Comoros, we have this, and the Comoros are Delta 6, D6. After completing his Fox Hotel Stroke India Delta X-ray operation from Mayat, Ivan will continue his journey in the Indian Ocean with a month-long stop in the Comoros as D60 Delta X-ray. Listen for him on CW and sideband. From the Western Sahara, which is S0, we have this. Nama S01 Alpha and Osman S01 Alpha Hotel will be QRV as S09 Sierra until May 31st, operating from the Sahrawi Republic. They are running 100 watts to dipole antennas and multiband beams. They will be operating QO100 from several grids. Look for S09S to also be QRV during the CQ Worldwide WPX CW contest, May 30 and 31. You can QSL via Club Log or LOTW, and we will have more information coming up on that contest. So from Guyana, which is 8 Radio, we have this. 8 Radio 1 Tango Mike is QRV until May 10th, weekdays between 2300 and 0300 Zulu on 160 through 6, CW sideband digital and satellite. Aldir, who's Papa Yankee 1 Sierra Alpha Delta, says on the weekend it's, quote, full-time on 160 through 6 in all those same modes. From Greenland, which is Oscar X-Ray, we have this. Bo, Oscar Zulu 1 Delta Juliet Juliet, is QRV is Oscar X-Ray 3 Lima X-Ray from AMSAT Island, Greenland, until April 25th. He's there on a work assignment and will be QRV in his spare time. The Cocos Keeling Islands are currently being activated, and that's VK9-C. Mark, VK9-BSA, and Dina, VK9-DEE, are QRV from Cocos Keeling Island. Van conditions have not been favorable, and Mark will mainly be operating on weekends and some evenings. There is no fixed operating schedule yet. As soon as we hear something, we always send it out. From the Marquesa Islands, and this should be happening about the time you're getting this, Fox Ocean stroke Mike. The Tango X-Ray 9 Whiskey team heading to the Marquesa Islands report that they will depart in 11 days. That was last week. They plan to be active from Haiva O, Marquesa Islands on April 19th, which is right around the corner, so keep an eye out for them. This week, the DX Mentor podcast will feature K6 VHF and his group that activated Wallace and Fortuna, and it was a terrific podcast. Give it a listen and let me know what you think. Until next week, this is Bill, AJB, saying 7-3, and thanks to my ex-whale Karen for her love and support. I hope to hear you in the pile-ups. Have a great DX week.
The University of Pittsburgh's Panther Amateur Radio Club had a unique opportunity last week, helping NASA track Artemis II's Orion spacecraft on its mission to the moon and back. John Ross, KD8IDJ, has all the details in this report.
Faculty Advisor Juan Manfredi, NA0B, said the club responded to a request from NASA to submit a proposal. We submitted our proposal in September of 2025 and were notified in November that our proposal was accepted, said Manfredi. But the real challenge was just beginning, and we needed to gather the equipment, test it, and make sure we could make the contact. For their part, the club's members needed to find and track a carrier signal from the spacecraft. Usually a 9-meter dish antenna would be needed, but with the help of the university's Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, ECE, they were able to purchase a 1.2-meter dish and a software-defined radio, SDR. Manfredi said there were two final challenges. Because of our location, we needed to be on the roof of our building between 4 and 6 a.m. every day. And because we are located in the northern hemisphere, we only had about a 20-degree window to acquire the signal. Well, and all 5 club members took turns and were able to acquire the spacecraft signal on the 2nd and 4th days of the mission. The information was recorded and is still being analyzed. For the club members, what was their reaction to this opportunity? Fantastic, said Manfredi. 20 years from now, they may not remember who taught them calculus, but will remember cold nights and mornings at 4 a.m. on the roof tracking a spacecraft. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
The Panther Amateur Radio Club is 111 years old and received its first experimental license, 8YI, in 1915. It's an ARRL-affiliated club.
The Federal Communications Commission said this week that it will vote this month on a proposal to bar all Chinese labs from testing electronic devices such as smartphones, cameras, and computers for use in the U.S., widening a previous action targeting Beijing. The FCC last year banned testing of U.S. electronics by labs owned or controlled by the Chinese government, which led to 23 labs being barred. But the substantial majority of Chinese-based test labs are still testing U.S. electronics, the agency said. The FCC says about 75% of all electronics are tested in labs in China. The FCC will vote on the proposal April 30th before considering public comments and finalizing the prohibition. Before the FCC takes a final vote to ban all Chinese testing, it will separately vote to adopt a streamlined approval process for devices tested in U.S. labs or labs from countries not posing national security risks, the agency said. The Chinese embassy in Washington did not immediately comment. This is the latest move by Washington to crack down on China over technology issues and equipment. In 2021, the FCC added telecommunications and video surveillance equipment made by Huawei, ZTE, Dahua, and Hyteria Hikvision to its covered list of companies posing U.S. national security risks.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. The other day, fellow amateur Randall, Victor Kilo 6 Whiskey Romeo, raised an interesting question. Using his HP 8920A RF communications test set, which you might recall from our adventures in measuring radio harmonic power in 2023, that report is on my GitHub repository, but I digress, Randall wondered if the signal strength he was seeing on several radios were the same, and discovered that in fact they were not. It made Randall ask who set the standard, and, following on from that, what does this look like in the real world? In 2014, episode 149 of the series What Use is an F-Call, I published an article titled The Simple S-Unit. In it, I referred to a standard for S-units defined in 1981. Unfortunately, I didn't provide any references, so, armed with more than a decade extra experience, Randall encouraged me to investigate. 20 seconds into my search, I discovered IARU Region 1 Technical Recommendation R1, which has 4 statements related to the topic at hand. Under the title Standardization of S-meter readings, it states that 1. One S-unit corresponds to a signal level difference of 6 dB. 2. On the bands below 30 MHz, a meter deviation of S9 corresponds to an available power of minus 73 dBm from a continuous wave signal generator connected to the receiver input terminals. 3. On the bands above 144 MHz, this available power shall be minus 93 dBm. 4. The metering system shall be based on quasi-peak detection with an attack time of 10 milliseconds plus or minus 2 milliseconds and a decay time constant of at least 500 milliseconds. So, job done, right? Yeah, no, not so much. The web page I quoted from is linked from the Wikipedia S-meter entry and was archived in 2005, and at the time existed on a Swedish domain in the home directory of Kjell, Sierra Mike 7 Golf Victor Foxtrot. The page has 2 additional interesting things: the words Brighton 1981 and Torremolinos 1990. Both of which refer to IARU conferences. The reports for these meetings are online. In searching for any reference to the definition of the S-unit, the 1990 report shows that Resolution 83-1 had the status of action completed, whatever that means. The 1981 conference document has all manner of interesting references, including log forms and summaries for international contest use, meteor scatter QSO procedure, and the definition of the standard way to determine Morse code speeds using the word Paris, followed by a 7-bit word space, to name 3. The one we're interested in is called Bravo Mike Stroke 134, S-meter standards, appearing on page 33 and 34 of the 1981 report. It's a photocopy, so you can see the text from other pages superimposed. I'm making this observation because this is essentially a standards document, intended to be adhered to by industry and the amateur community. It gets better, or rather, worse. The text that is referenced by Wikipedia uses numbers for the 4 elements, where BM134 uses letters. The third item in BM134 says that it applies for bands above 30 MHz, but the document I just quoted appears to be unique in saying that it applies to bands above 144 MHz. The fourth item, dealing with the way that the meter responds, has been altered on BM134. The text, plus or minus 2 milliseconds, and a decay time are in a different font and at an angle. Worth noting that the change includes ms twice rather than msec, as the unit for milliseconds used elsewhere. Searching for a phrase within the standard, I discovered the Region 1 HF Manager's Handbook, version 7.01, which appears to include the S-meter standard in Chapter 11.1.2. But closer inspection reveals that the fourth item is missing, the one about quasi-peak detection. This is significant because the S-meter standard is based on a CW signal, not an SSB signal, which fluctuates. There's no reference as to where or when this was removed, or by whom. These changes are repeated in subsequent versions of the HF Manager's Handbook. There's other differences too. Instead of using millivolt and microvolt as shown in the original BM134 standard table, all units have been converted to millivolt for no discernible reason. The new table, including typo, is also copied everywhere. While we're at it, the original standard contains the letters Victor, Echo, Romeo, Oscar, November at the top. They don't show in the HF Manager's Handbook either. This is curious since, last time I checked, those letters signify an organization that at least some here will recognize, the Vereniging voor Experimenteel Radio-onderzoek in Nederland, known to the people who don't speak fluent Dutch as the peak body for amateur radio in the Netherlands, VERON. Searching its website does not reveal their contribution to this standards document, which, I have to say, is par for the course. Much of our amateur radio history is poorly documented or archived, if at all, something which I've spent plenty of my time attempting to remedy over more than a decade, one article at a time. Moving on. The phrase I mentioned earlier bears reading out in its entirety. From BM134, quote, "We hope that the current recommendation will be followed by all equipment manufacturers, so that in a not-too-distant future one will know how to interpret the strength report of the other station." End quote. It goes on to say, quote, "Societies should advise as much as possible their members about equipment manufacturers adhering to this recommendation and shall try to avoid publication of receiver designs which do not in principle use the recommended standards." End quote. Which brings me to you. What have you done lately about this? It's only been 45 years. Perhaps it's time to implement this? I can tell you that preliminary results show that the S1 level sensitivity associated with the radios that Randall showed me are reporting S1 when really they should be reporting about S4. You might wonder why this is the case. Calibration appears to be the underlying cause. While S9 itself is variable in accuracy, as in some radios are more accurately close to minus 73 dBm, others are consistently 5 dB shy of that. When an S4 signal is reported as S1, then the 6 dB step size is not correctly implemented. Similarly, when an S9 plus 20 is reported by a signal that's only 16 dB stronger than S9, there's more fudging going on. The differences between a signal with and without preamp are also worth noting as being inconsistent. In other words, the level and steps associated with S-meter units are all over the place, which is interesting since the authors of the standard already alluded to this when 45 years ago they wrote, quote, "Simple means for calibration of at least the 6 dB level ratio should be published." End quote. While we're digging for causes, why is there not a standards library associated with the IARU, where documents like BM134 exist, and with it their current level of application? Before you tell me money, I'd point out that in 1981 IARU Region 1 had $263,945.88 or francs, guilders, pounds or glass beads in the bank. It's unclear which, since there's no unit stated. At the 1990 conference, IARU Region 2 had a reported net worth of $150,000, with $40,000 annual income, and Region 3 reported that its finances are also sound. How do I know? That's in those conference documents too. Curiously, the 1981 report states that, quote, "When presenting the 1981 and subsequent accounts, the Treasurer would also prepare a brief report which would explain the reasons for items of such expenditure for which the purpose was not obvious." End quote. I wonder what happened to those explanations. So, what is the current status of BM134 and what are the legal implications of me publishing it on my GitHub page? While we're at it, I realize that I can fix the Wikipedia page, but where do I point it at? I'm on it. Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.
The Amateur Radio Workshop at the 2026 National Hurricane Conference in Orlando, Florida, was held Tuesday, March 31st. Representatives of the National Hurricane Center staff, Canadian Hurricane Center staff, amateur radio station WX4 NHC at the National Hurricane Center, the Hurricane Watch Net, Saturn, the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network, and the ARRL gave presentations on amateur radio community response and recovery in hurricanes. The session was conducted in person and over a live stream that was recorded by VoIP Hurricane Net videographer Jim Palmer. Kilo Bravo 1, Kilo Quebec whiskey. At the workshop, the National Hurricane Center staff recognized WX4 NHC founder and longtime coordinator and assistant coordinator Julio Ripoll, WD4R, for 46 years of service to the National Hurricane Center. Ripoll is stepping back from that role. He was presented with a service award equivalent to those given to employees who retire from the National Hurricane Center staff. Lloyd Kurtzman, N4LJK, will be the new WX4 NHC coordinator, and Ripoll will support the transition. National Hurricane Center Branch Chief Dan Brown and National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan spoke about Julio's long-standing achievements through more than 10 directors at the Hurricane Center and his tremendous commitment to public service. The award ceremony is part of the overall YouTube recording, but a specific video of the award presentation can also be viewed.
Bruce Page, KK5DO, is here now with this week's AMSAT report. Bruce?
Thanks, John. The 2026 Dayton Hamvention will be held Friday through Sunday, May 15th through 17th, at the Greene County Fairgrounds in Xenia, Ohio. Once again, AMSAT will have a presence there. Be sure to stop by the ARRL booth and visit with the good people there. Then head on over to Building 1, booths 1007 through 1010 and 1107 through 1110, which are across from each other, and visit all the AMSAT booths. There will be satellite demonstrations. Talk with those from AMSAT Engineering, see the latest in the CubeSat sim, and much more. The AMSAT Forum will be Saturday, May 16th from 1:50 p.m. through 3:10 p.m. Eastern Time in Forum Room 2. AMSAT and TAPR have an annual banquet at the Kohler Presidential Center on Friday. If you are interested, more information is available on the AMSAT store at amsat.org. FO29 is once again expected to enter eclipse periods from around April 21st. The satellite should enter periods of sunlight in mid-November, allowing the satellite to be used. During eclipse periods, the command team will allow the satellite to operate according to a schedule. When it is in full sunlight, there's no need for a schedule. This is Bruce Page, KK5DO. Back to you, John.
And thanks, Bruce, for that report.
It is time for this week's look at the terrestrial propagation forecast and the solar weather forecast. Solar activity was at very low levels with only isolated B-class flaring, mostly from region 4416. There are currently 4 numbered regions on the visible disk. Region 4416 remains the largest group by area, but exhibited signs of structural weakening, including flux emergence and a slight decay of its intermediary pores. Region 4419 was the most complex group on the disk and showed flux emergence, growth, and divergence within its intermediary spots, leading to the development of a mixed polarity gamma configuration. And the last region, 4418, is trending toward plage with only 2 small bipolar pores remaining. And region 4415, by the way, remains stable. Coronal mass ejections observed in coronagraph imagery were determined to be directed away from the Earth. Solar wind parameters reflected waning coronal hole high-speed stream influences toward a nominal regime. Solar wind speeds underwent a gradual, albeit erratic, decline from early period highs near 420 kilometers per second to stabilize around 375 kilometers per second by the end of the reporting period. The phi angle was predominantly oriented in a positive direction away from the Sun. Solar wind parameters are expected to remain primarily near nominal levels through April 16th. Significant enhancements are anticipated on April 17th with the onset of a co-rotating interaction region that will precede the arrival of a negative polarity high-speed stream. SpaceWeather.com reports a large hole has opened in the Sun's atmosphere and is directly facing Earth. High-speed solar wind flowing from this coronal hole should arrive on April 18th, potentially sparking a G2 class geomagnetic storm. For more information concerning radio propagation, visit the ARRL Technical Information Service, read a quick guide to HF propagation using solar indices, and check out the propagation page of Carl Lewetzel-Swab K9LA. For customizable propagation charts, visit the VOA CAP online for Ham Radio website.
Just ahead in radio sport this week, April 16th to the 17th, it's the Walk for the Bacon QRP contest. That is CW. April 17th to the 20th, Florida State Parks on the Air, CW phone and digital. April 17th and 18th, the Worldwide Holy Land contest. That's CW and phone. April 18th to the 19th, the Texas State Parks on the Air, CW and phone there. And on April 10th, the ES Open HF Championship, CW and phone. Remember to visit the ARRL contest calendar for more events and information. Upcoming Section State and Division Conventions, April 18th, the Delmarva Amateur Radio and Electronics Expo hosting the ARRL Delaware State Convention. That's in Georgetown, Delaware. May 3rd, the Warmminster Amateur Radio Club Annual Hamfest hosting the ARRL Eastern Pennsylvania Section Convention. That's in Bristol, Pennsylvania. And on May 9th, the ARRL Nebraska State Convention. That's in Lincoln, Nebraska. And remember, too, to search the ARRL Hamfest and Convention database to find more events in your area.
New requirements for radio amateurs are introduced in Moldova. The National Regulatory Agency for Electronic Communications and Information Technology in Moldova drafted a new regulation of the radio amateur service of the Republic of Moldova. According to the document, the use of radio stations necessarily requires a license issued on the basis of an amateur radio operator's certificate. They are valid for 5 years and are categorized by qualification classes. Foreign radio amateurs can temporarily operate on Moldovan territory without a local license if their country is a member of the European Conference of Postal and Telecommunications Administrations, or CEPT, but prior notification to the regulator is required. Radio amateurs can operate not only on terrestrial frequencies, but also via radio stations on artificial satellites. There are also strict requirements for call signs. It is forbidden to transmit commercial, coded, or unauthorized messages, as well as to interfere with other communication services. Radio amateurs in Moldova are recommended to use the International Phonetic Alphabet for radio-telephone communications.
An amateur radio operator in Oman is hoping to lead the way for hams to have smoother, more reliable satellite tracking and contacts with the help of his downloadable mobile app. It didn't take long for Yusuf al-Balushi, A46UNX, to find his place in amateur radio right after becoming licensed in 2024. He was almost immediately drawn to chasing satellites, often using his own homebrewed tools. Those challenging early days inspired him to create a free satellite tracking mobile app to help deliver the best possibilities for successful contacts. He gave it the name AMSATing. A member of the Royal Oman Amateur Radio Society, he shares the app freely with amateurs around the world, whether they are using its interactive map to track the ISS or to search for one particular amateur satellite. The app's numerous features include a built-in SSTV decoder that supports Robot 36/72 and other modes. He told the website Muscat Daily that this was his attempt at creating a single place that integrated as many needed services as possible without requiring the user to switch between several apps. Finding all existing apps incomplete, he began his development work in August of last year. AMSATing was formally released this past January. He designed it for use by licensed hams, satellite chasers, and people involved in nearest contacts. In fact, tracking the ISS is a default function. Individuals who want access to other satellites will need to obtain a free API key from the satellite tracking service N2YO. Yusuf said that the app is also useful for grid square hunters working towards awards such as VUCC. It can be downloaded for free from the Apple and Android app stores. More details are available at unixear.com. He also told the website that he hopes the app will make satellite communications easier and more enjoyable for the amateur radio community.
It's a party, and you're invited to RSVP. April 25th is International Marconi Day, and amateurs around the world will be calling CQ to honor the man who helped bring us wireless communication. Register for the official event by visiting the website operated by the Cornish Amateur Radio Club. The number of registered stations continues to grow, and you can see the list as well on the same website. There are awards available for shortwave listeners as well as hams. Visit the website to see how to qualify. Internet-assisted modes, such as DMR, Echolink, and digital voice modes, are not eligible.
This week, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr announced that the Commission would vote on an order to modernize its satellite spectrum sharing rules, a change that could unlock more than $2 billion in economic benefits for the American people and up to 7-fold more capacity for space-based broadband services. Drawing from the state-of-the-art satellite technology, the FCC's new technical rules would revise the decade-old framework for how geostationary orbit and non-geostationary orbit systems share spectrum. That 1990s-era framework predates the revolutionary changes in spectrum sharing technology that have developed in the decades since. The FCC's new framework will enable faster speeds, lower cost, and greater reliability, representing another step to ensure that consumers benefit from competitive and affordable internet options. The FCC is moving fast to unleash affordable, high-speed internet. By discarding last-century satellite regulations, we could see billions of dollars in benefits for the American economy and broadband speeds many times faster than what is available today. This overdue rethinking of space spectrum sharing rules will bring greater competition to the broadband marketplace and reduce the number of satellites needed to serve a given area. Our Build America agenda is unleashing America's space industry to deliver for consumers. The current decade-old regulatory regime has significantly limited the ability of operators to deliver high-speed, low-latency broadband services to consumers. Until now, non-geostationary orbit operators' power levels have been restricted by the limit developed in the late 1990s to protect geostationary orbit satellites. The public draft of the report and order will be available on the April Open Meetings webpage on the Commission's webpage.
The Federal Communications Commission has sent a notice of unlicensed operation in the 11 GHz band to an internet service provider in the Sierra Nevada foothill region of California. Conifer Communications is an ISP based in Groveland. The FCC said it was transmitting on 10.915 GHz for over a year after its license had expired. That part of the radio spectrum is allocated by the Commission for common carrier and fixed point-to-point microwave operations. The San Francisco office of the FCC's Enforcement Bureau said that it received a complaint of an unlicensed station operating atop Moccasin Peak. Last September, according to the Commission's account, agents confirmed that Conifer Communications was transmitting with a license that expired in February 2024 and had not been renewed. The Enforcement Bureau warned that operating radio transmitting equipment without authorization is a violation of federal law and could subject Conifer to monetary fines and seizure of the equipment. Conifer Communications must discontinue operations immediately and must not resume. It also has 10 days from the date of the notice to respond with any evidence that it has authority to operate.
Get ready for amateur radio's biggest annual gathering. Dayton Hamvention 2026 will take place May 15th through the 17th at the Greene County Fair and Expo Center in Xenia, Ohio. John Ross, Kilo Delta 8, India Delta Juliet is here with everything you need to know.
General Chairman Brian Marklin, N8UDQ, said volunteers are working hard to make this the best show yet. This year's theme is Radio Adventure. Radio Adventure has always been about exploration of ideas, technologies, distances, and possibilities, from the earliest spark gap pioneers to today's digital experiments, satellite operators, contesters, emergency communicators, and outdoor enthusiasts. Amateur radio continues to be a gateway to discovery, said Marklin. Among the activities taking place is the ARRL Youth Rally, returning on Saturday, May 16th. That rally is designed for students ages 11 to 21 and offers a great opportunity to connect with other young hams. Youth Rally activities will be led by ARRL Director of Education and Learning Steve Goodgame, K5ATA, and volunteers from the ARRL Collegiate Amateur Radio Program. Advanced registration is recommended. While Hamvention admission is already free for students, high school and younger, the $20 Youth Rally registration fee includes a T-shirt to be worn on Saturday, badge and lanyard, reusable tote bag, and a complimentary 3-day Hamvention admission ticket for Friday through Sunday. Students will enjoy an afternoon of hands-on activities, learning, and fun. Highlights will include satellite communications, a short sprint contest, a fox hunt, and a chance to make contact with a parachute mobile station. Attendees are encouraged to bring a 2-meter meter handheld radio if you have one. The youth rally will be followed by the ARRL Collegiate Amateur Radio Meetup. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
For more information about the youth rally and registration, and to find other ARRL activities and exhibits at Hamvention, visit www.arrl.org/Dayton-Hamvention-2026. For Hamvention information and general admission tickets, visit hamvention.org.
The amateur radio on the International Space Station, or ARRL program, is seeking formal and informal education institutions and organizations, individually or working together, to host their amateur radio contact with a crew member on board the ISS. ARRL anticipates that the contact would be held between January 1st, 2027 to June 30th, 2027. Crew scheduling and ISS orbits will determine the exact contact dates. To maximize these radio contact opportunities, ARRL is looking for organizations that will draw large numbers of participants and integrate the contact into a well-developed education plan. This proposal is due to ARRL by May 22, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time. Proposal information and more details such as expectations, proposal guidelines, and the proposal form can be found on arrl.org. An informational webinar will be held at 8 p.m. Eastern on April 30th on Zoom. Crew members aboard the International Space Station will participate in scheduled amateur radio contacts. These radio contacts are approximately 10 minutes in length and allow students to interact with the astronauts through a question and answer session. An ARRL contact is a voice-only communication opportunity via amateur radio between astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the space station and classrooms and communities. ARRL contacts afford education audiences the opportunity to learn firsthand from astronauts what it is like to live and work in space and to learn about space research conducted on the ISS. Students will also have an opportunity to learn about satellite communication, wireless technology, and radio science. Because of the nature of human spaceflight and the complexity of scheduling activities aboard the ISS, organizations must demonstrate flexibility to accommodate changes in dates and times of the radio contact. Please direct any questions to education@arriss-usa.org.
A Florida ham with an experimental license is busy exploring propagation and its impact on the 4-meter and 8-meter bands. In the hope of gaining insights into seasonal propagation trends, sporadic E, trans-equatorial propagation, and low-band VHF path behavior, the experimental station, WQ2-XDM, has been conducting experiments using the digital weak signal modes WSPR and FT8 on the 4-meter and 8-meter bands. The license was granted to John K9JMS, who is asking fellow hams to monitor reception and send him reports for data collection. He recommends using PSK Reporter and station logs and screenshots to record time, signal-to-noise ratio, grid, and frequency details while monitoring FT8 on 40.680 MHz. The station's website says John will publish a final white paper and open dataset. The location in Florida is key to the experimental activity because of the region's recurring tropospheric ducting in the Gulf and Atlantic region. Florida's low latitude makes it especially suitable for capturing trans-equatorial propagation and equatorial ionospheric phenomena. According to the station's page on QRZ.com, the project is aimed at strengthening the case for more interest and access to 8 meters. Unlike hams in a number of other countries such as Ireland, Slovenia, and South Africa, licensed amateurs in the U.S. do not have access to either the 8-meter or 4-meter bands. Signal reports or queries can be sent to John at the email address wq2xdm.effell@gmail.com.
A mobile phone network created to provide public safety agencies around the United States with reliable emergency communications is poised for service upgrades after reaching an agreement with the federal government and the network's private sector partner, AT&T. Under the deal, AT&T, which built and maintains the network known as FirstNet, will cover the cost of $1 billion worth of the network's improvements. At the same time, AT&T will reduce its bill to the federal government by another $1 billion for its continued support to FirstNet. The government selected AT&T to build the network in 2017 when the service was first known as the Nationwide Public Safety Broadband Network. Its creation was driven by the breakdown in emergency communications for public safety agencies and first responders in the aftermath of the terror attacks of September 11th, 2001.
And finally this week, we have news from DXtra, a new free-to-use radio portal with a variety of frequency databases and visualization tools. Here's a list of new features. They include a ham radio call sign lookup feature based on the FCC database, including a list of USA ham repeaters with computed Longley Rice coverage maps. A new section on FM tropospheric ducting DX reception with a live FM band scanner. The site also displays a map of CONUS with a live tropo forecast and stat analysis. Look up for all National Weather Service weather stations with coverage maps, a main public service emergency frequency database with coverage maps, enhanced disaster simulation page, and finally a searchable database of USA TV stations with coverage maps. To check out these features, go to dextra.com.
This Week in Amateur Radio is holding open auditions for news anchors for the weekly national worldwide amateur radio news service. If you have a good radio voice and can reliably read provided news copy, we are looking for you. This, of course, is an all-volunteer position. An amateur radio license is not required. You must have a high-quality microphone, headset mics are not used, and be familiar with audio editing software to record and edit your finished news stories before uploading. If you would like to try out for a weekly or bi-weekly anchor position with North America's premier amateur radio news on air and podcast, please send an email to our producer, George, W2XBS. You can include a sample MP3 of yourself reading news copies sent as an attachment to W2XBS77@gmail.com. That's whiskey, the number 2, X-ray Bravo Sierra 77 @gmail.com. Be sure and use Anchor Audition in the subject line. Please include your phone number and a good window of time for a callback to discuss your submission and our operating logistics to see if This Week in Amateur Radio is a good fit for you. We hope to hear from you soon. This Week in Amateur Radio is streamed on the internet, broadcast on low-power FM, and heard on nets and repeaters all around the world, like the K2IWR repeater operated by the Skyline Amateur Radio Club on 147.180 MHz in Cortland, New York, where This Week in Amateur Radio is heard each Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If you would like to have your club's repeater announced on This Week in Amateur Radio, send us an email with all the pertinent information to w2xbs77@gmail.com. Many of the news and information items heard in this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio have been provided by the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL Audio News Service, and the ARRL Letter, AMSAT, the Radio Amateurs of Canada, the Shortwave Listening Post, the Federal Communications Commission, the Radio Society of Great Britain, and Ofcom, the South African Radio League, the International Amateur Radio Union, the Wireless Institute of Australia and the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters, the Amateur Radio Newsline, the Rain Hamcast, Eric Guth, 4Z1UG and QSO Today, QRZ.com, the International Telecommunications Union, the 425DX News, Parks on the Air, and the Soda Reflector, and various news sources on the Internet.
With special thanks to all our weekly news sources and to you, our listeners, that wraps up this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. If you'd like to write to us, you can find everything you need, including archive editions of the news service, at our website at twiar.net. And now, for all of us at This Week in Amateur Radio headquarters and our news team around the world, this is Chris Perrine, KB2FAF, wishing you a 73.